Well, everyone, I wanted to give you an update on what's been going on with the observation bee hive since the spring buildup. This hive has seen a lot of action. If you've watched our YouTube channel, we actually had a swarm cast from the observation hive, and that was only one of 3 swarms over about a 2-week period. And I just wanted to let you know that after the 3rd swarm, it looked like there was only about a cup full of bees left in the observation hive, and we weren't sure if there was a queen. Very little activity. There wasn't really much going on at all, and we just thought we'd let it go for a little while and just see if we've seen any activity. After about 30 days of not really seeing much, it still looked like we had about a cup full of bees that whole time. I went in there just to kind of clean it up, and I was thinking of maybe getting a queen out of the bee yard and putting it in and starting the observation hive up again. But wouldn't you know it, after we took about 10 frames out of the observation hive, we got down to frame number 10. This particular hive holds 15. So it's more like what you would find in the wild. It's not a show and tell hive. It's a true hive that the bees can live in year round. And they can function, they can cast swarms, they can store honey, they can do all the things that bees would do in the wild. That's what I really like about this particular observation hive. So anyway, we get down to frame number 10, and guess what we see on the inside? Because remember, it's 3 frames deep. So we took the outside frame off. Guess what we saw on the inside? Found our queen. And we found brood, we found eggs. It was one whole frame where she had just worked the whole thing, and she was starting to build up her forces again so that she could build up the population of the hive, because without the right number of bees, you don't have enough food supply coming in. So we just put everything back together, and that hive that was only a cup full of bees in about 30 days time turned into what you see here. It's just a bustling hive. I'm going to ballpark the number at around 30 or 40,000 bees. That's what we're up to. So they really took off fast. Now the thing is, right now we're in the time of year that's called a dearth. It almost sounds like death, and it's spelled D-E-A-R-T-H. That just means there's not much food supply out in the environment. So a lot of the blooms have come and gone from spring, and even though it's warm, even though there's a lot of green, there's not really a lot for the bees to forage. There are some things, but the foraging is tough right now, and so that's called a dearth. So what the bees are doing now is they've built up a large number of bees, but they're not going to cast any swarms. The reason for that is because they would probably die. And they know that. The bees are really, they have that programming built in, and they know that that's a bad idea to cast a swarm now. So what they're going to do is use the workforce that they have to go out, forage what they can, store up as much as they can, and then of course we're going to have a fall flow. It's not as big as the spring flow, but around September and October we have goldenrod. Here in North Georgia. And so they're going to forage as much as they can from that. They're going to bring in pollen stores. They're bringing in some pollen right now. In fact, we've seen them going in and out of the tube with some bright orange pollen and some yellow pollen. So they're finding something. Temperatures here have been right around 100. So it's been really hot, and we haven't had rain in about a month. It finally rained just the other day. We had a good rain, and so with that, everything turned green again, and I think more flowers have opened up because of the rain. So the bees are bringing in some pollen today, and it looks really good. So we're hoping that things keep going good. We have to monitor them. I really don't want to feed them if I don't have to. That's kind of one of the things I do as far as my management technique. I don't like to feed unless I absolutely have to. I like my bees to get the external pressure that they're getting in the environment. So if we're in a hot spell, I want them to deal with that. If we're in a dearth, I want them to deal with that so that they do what they do best, and that is respond to the environment. Every time we come in and we do something, you know, it may be for their benefit, like giving them sugar, and that's the one thing I will do. If I see that they're about to starve, I'll feed them sugar. Or what's even better is if I have another hive with a lot of honey and they've got honey to spare, I'll give that colony that needs honey a few frames out of that hive with the surplus. Honey is really the best thing for bees to eat. Sugar will get them by, that's okay. I'll put in the nectar gold, I'll add that to the sugar. That will make it more like the nectar they would find in flowers. So if you're going to feed, that's one of the things I do recommend is use that nectar gold, which is an organic nectar substitute, and it'll give them the same food profile as they would find in forage out in the wild. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to go out in the bee yard and we're going to check out some of the hives. We're going to make sure that basically everybody has the three main things going for it. Number one, they got to have a queen. So if we find eggs or if we find very young brood, we know we've got a queen. So we don't have to keep digging into the hive once we find those things. Number two, we want to make sure they've got enough food supply. So we're going to make sure they got enough honey. If they do, they're going to just ride out this dearth until we get into the fall flow. And then two, we're going to look for anything that's obviously wrong with the colony. And if it needs help, we're going to help it out. So we're going to look for things like signs of disease. If they have hive beetles, which is something that we get here in the south, we're going to try to make sure that it's not out of control. So let's go check it out and see what we find. I always start my inspections on the outside. I try to look and see how much activity we've got coming in and out, and this particular hive's got quite a bit going on. And another thing, because we're in a dearth, you notice that I've got corks on my entrances. I've only allowed them to have a couple entrances, and that's because the bees will rob each other. And in my bee yard, I've actually had that happen 3 times so far. We're going to find out if there's any more of that going on today. Hopefully not. But even a strong colony can be robbed if it has too many entry points in it. So that's why I use the corks. That keeps it easier for the bees to guard the entrance. Now, because it's still going to be very hot here in Georgia, it's probably going to hit about 95 today. So I'm going to try and do a lot of my inspecting before about 1 o'clock if I can. Just because it's just too hot. It feels like 100 plus sometimes. Now I still wear the same outfit I always wear, which is shorts, t-shirt, I've got sandals on, but I will wear my veil. The bees are more protective during a dearth, so I have my veil ready. I just kind of put the veil part underneath, and I have it ready just in case the bees are a little bit grumpy when I open them up. Most of the time they're fine. And during a dearth, you don't want your inspections to go on and on. You want to get in and out in 5 minutes or less. So that's what we're going to try to do today is go through a hive. I'll try to show you as much as I can about what's happening inside this hive, and you can check it out and see what we're looking for. All right. So I see bees up in the feeder. They're not in the feeder here, but I see them on the inside. So we've got bees all the way up top. I got my smoker ready, and let's just give them a listen. Crack the feeder off here. All right. So the feeder's peeling apart a little bit, it looks like. I don't see a lot of beetles, that's good. Beetles are a problem here in the south, but I don't see beetles, and that's usually where they'll be, is up top. Alright, I do see honey, which is great. I don't see a ton of it, but I see enough that they're not going to starve. So, looks like we've got 1, 2, 3 frames with honey, and 2 on the outside that do not have honey. So there's 3 frames of honey up here. Let's go down a level, let's see what it looks like, a little lower. Okay. Now the good news is I do see more honey. I see a lot of bees. I always like to see a lot of bees. I'm just going to give them a very light smoke, just so that they can move and I can get my fingers on one of these frames. I'm going to take one out of the middle, because that's generally, if there's any brood, that's where it would be, is in the middle. pry apart right here, and we'll have a look and see if the queen's made it up to this point. Let's see. How we look. Sure enough, I see eggs, and that's great. That means I can actually stop looking for my queen at this point. I don't have to keep going and going. Once you find eggs, you know you've got it. So here's that frame of bees, and it's just laid up with eggs. I don't think the camera can zoom in enough that you could see the eggs, but it's an egg frame in the center of the what looked like the brood nest. There's a little bit of emerging brood. Most of it's hatched out. So because they've got about 3 frames of honey still here, I'm going to just monitor them. I'm not going to feed them. If I feed them, it may stimulate the queen to lay more than she should during the dearth, and I don't want that to happen because then you can set them up for starvation. So we'll put that back in. And basically this hive inspection is finished. We saw that they got a queen that's laying eggs, they've got food, and they've got a good number of bees to keep away pests, problems. I don't see any signs of disease. There's no hive beetles running around. So no need to keep this hive open any longer, especially in a dearth, because it'll set off robbing. So we'll just put it back together. Put our feeder back on, and we may need to feed. We're going to watch. You know, it may be in a month or two they might eat through that honey. So right now during the dearth, I check them about every 30 days. During the buildup, you need to check them maybe once a week, every 10 days, something like that. But during the dearth, as long as they got food and they look good, you can go in here about once every 30 days. All right, here's a hive that was last inspected on May 27th, and now it's June 30th. So it's been a little bit over a month. Let's see what's happening in here. Alright, we've got bees up top, bees on our feeder. We want to make sure we got bees covering all the frames. I do see a couple hive beetles. I don't see a huge problem with them, but I do see 2. I just squished them with my knife, and the hive beetle trap is plugged up with propolis. So it's pretty much ineffective. So we're going to replace this. Okay, so we got a new beetle trap, and I'm just going to scrape away a little of the extra propolis so the trap sets down nice and tight to the frames. I do see looks like 4 or 5 frames of honey up here, so that's great. Food supply looks good. Let's just make sure we've got our queen alive and well. Let's see what we look like down a little level, another level here. I see a lot of bees, and I see more honey. Not all the frames of honey are really jam-packed, but there's still enough. And again, I'm going to take a center frame up, because generally this is where you would find some brood or eggs. It's right in the middle. So let's get that middle frame out. And see how we're looking. And we've got brood. It's always good. Brood, and I'm looking for eggs. Eggs is a sure sign there's a queen. Brood is good, and I do see eggs too, so that's fantastic. Oh, and there's our queen bee. How do you like that? Alright. Let's see if we can get a shot of our queen here. Alright, I'm trying to hold it so that you can see the queen. She just so happened to be on the frame that we're inspecting. So, the inspection looks good. We're going to keep going. We're going to close this one up and go to the next hive. Put Mama back in here. Just looking to see how much activity we do have. And she is laying an egg in the cell right now, so we're just going to ease that back in. Nice and slow. We don't want to hurt the queen. There we go. We just push everything back to the center. Close that right up. Now we've got a beetle trap here that they've propolized shut. So if a beetle were to get in here, it would pretty much be useless. They can't corral it into the trap, so we're going to remove that trap, scrape off the propolis here, and set another one in. These really do a good job. I like these, and I just fill mine with a little bit of hydrolyzed lime dust, or you can use diatomaceous earth. Anything that'll dry out the beetle when it comes in contact with it. So this hive inspection is finished. Oh, got my first sting. Alright. They do sting more during a dearth. So we'll just button them up and mark the date that they look good. Put these in here. Okay. Put new labels on them today. I like to use duct tape on the back of them, and I mark the date when I inspected last. It's the only way to keep track of this many colonies. So today is June 30th, and it looked good. On to the next one. This is another hive right next door, the next door neighbor, that has not been inspected also since May 27th. So let's see how they're doing. In fact, this one we did a merge. I've got some newspaper showing that I merged this colony with a queenless colony. Just put two together as one. Let's see how they're looking. Well, we got a lot of honey up here, and they're humming a little bit, so I want to move slow because I could get stung. My smoker went out. We had some rain the other day, and all my leaves are a little bit damp. I'm going to see if they can still get a little smell of that smoke, and maybe they'll move out of the way for me. There's really no smoke coming out of it, but I see honey up here, and that's great. They got to have that food. So I see honey. Let's get down a level past the honey. Make sure it feels heavy. That's heavy. And that's just the newspaper I used to merge the two colonies together.
They chew through it. By the time they chew through it, everybody gets along just fine. This beetle trap looks pretty full. I haven't seen one beetle on this inspection, which is good. I don't like beetles. Beetles will ruin a hive quick. But usually they only attack weak colonies, so we try to keep the colonies a good number of bees. This one has a pretty healthy number of bees already. You can see several crawling around. Again, I'm going to pull this middle frame up and see what we find. Because I found honey in the top super. Let's get into the middle here. Inspect this one and see if it's honey or if it's brood. I don't know if we'll see brood this high up or not, but let's look. And sure enough, we do see brood. Cap brood, actually. And some young larvae. Good healthy number of bees. I'll show you something else that's unique to this time of year. Alright, if you look at the bottom of the frame, they won't draw that out. They quit. You see how it doesn't continue down to the bottom? That's because after the honey flow, resources are kind of scarce, and they just kind of make do with what they have. They're not going to complete that until next spring. That's when they'll finish out the comb. So it'll just kind of stay like that. But this is a nice brood frame. We've got larvae, very young larvae. I'm trying to look here and show you. I've got some young larvae. I've got cap brood. And I'm looking to see if I see eggs. If I see an egg, I know I've got a queen. In back of the beehive, and you'll notice right here, this is a hole. It's a 3/4, I think it's a 3/4 inch hole or a 1 inch hole, give or take. I'm not that accurate when it comes to doing this. It's not that important. The important thing is there's a way for the hot air to escape out of the hive. So I use these feeders even if I'm not feeding, which is really the case now. I only feed maybe 1 or 2 colonies at the most, that's it. The rest of them, we've had a decent enough year where they've got enough honey supply that all I got to do is just keep an eye on that. I check them about once every 20 or 30 days. If they got honey, I just leave them go. I don't worry about feeding them. If they start getting down low, or if they have 0 reserves, or if maybe another colony robbed them out, maybe it's one of the ones I forgot to put the reducers on or cork up the holes, and another colony comes along and robs them, well then I need to feed them. So this allows the hot air to escape. That's why they're on all year round. So it kind of works like an attic where hot air will naturally rise up and ventilate and escape the hive. So the bees don't have to worry about overheating. They'll still beard up a little bit, but it's not that bad. I get just a little bit of bearding even on the really hot days, and it's been now it's July, it's been about 90, almost 100. In fact, we did hit 100 a couple times already. We'll probably hit it again. But so far, it's been doing real good, and I'm real pleased with how this works.